There was a plane crash. The plane went down yesterday around 10:55 a.m. in Smyrna, Tennessee. The plane was owned by a woman and husband, or a wife and husband, named Gwen Shamblin Lara and Joe Lara. Gwen actually is a very controversial leader of a diet church. Literally, that's what the church is all about, is losing weight and being thin. And she became famous in the early 1990s when she wrote a book called The Way Down Workshop. And she was on Larry King. She was interviewed by all these major talk shows. Her book was used in over 1,000 different churches. She had speaking engagements. She was doing these workshops at its peak on an annual basis of over 250,000 people all across the globe. The controversial diet that she promoted was basically that you literally just like only eat when you're hungry, and then you only eat half of what you would normally eat, and you don't eat more than that. And the goal was to be really thin, deny yourself food, and by giving into God and only thinking about God, then you will be thin. So people that are a part of this church, which she started, I think she started building the church in the late 1990s. It was finished in the early 2000s, and Remnant Fellowship sort of grew from there. Remnant Fellowship is actually based in Brentwood, Tennessee, and it's described by former members as a cult. Even in the area, they describe it as a cult. The group is really, Gwen is the leader. She's actually called the Prophet. People they have like worships for her. Like, I was actually watching videos of her earlier today where they did an entire series of worshiping her. They do these annual conferences where everyone talks about how great she is. She's called the Prophet. They're told to, obey her and to, in a lot of ways, look at her as God. She had been known to be very critical of the people around her for not being thin enough, making sure that all of her leaders were thin. And this whole idea that if you obey her and obey God, then you'll be thin and everything will work out. And she also uses this for addiction, for mental health, for anxiety. The group became more and more insular the longer it went on. And group members, I'm told, have been told to not have any contact with people that are not within the church. So family members that have family that are in this church, a lot of them feel helpless because they can't get access to their family members, and they're seeing their family members lose more and more weight. I was told about this plane crash yesterday when a family member of one of the people on the plane reached out to me. This person actually reached out to me a couple months ago because their family is involved in this church, and they were worried about their family being involved in this church because they said it was the family was cutting them off. They had become more insular. The beliefs were getting more and more severe, and they wanted some help in exposing it so that people realized that they could reach out to the people that are stuck in there, that they should get out. So this is a very controversial person. She has a history of really giving very controversial advice and of, in a lot of ways, being rather horrible to people by making them starve themselves in order to be more like God. So yesterday they were taking off on a plane. She was with a bunch of her leaders from the church, with her husband, who is a pilot, and her daughter's husband, who's also a pilot. So the Rutherford rescue last night notified that this was a recovery mission and it was no longer a rescue. And so they notified, and they basically gave the names out of everyone that was involved in the crash. And they said William J. Lara, Gwen Shamblin Lara, Jennifer Martin, David Martin, Jessica Walters, Jonathan Walters, Brandon Hanna, all of Brentwood, Tennessee. All are presumed deceased. So then, just to give you a picture so you can know who was on this plane, here's a photo of them. There at the top left is Joe and Gwen. Then you have David and Jennifer, and then you have Jonathan and Jessica, and then you have Brandon, who's in the bottom right. And Brandon was alone. Elizabeth was at home with her kids. So word got out about this crash, which happened at 10:53 Tennessee time yesterday. And then not long after the crash, her daughter Elizabeth sent this message to leadership. And it said, "My brother and I are asking for immediate prayers right now, as we have gotten word that Gwen and Joe Lara's plane had gone down for a controlled quick landing. We do not have word yet of the outcome, but we are asking for prayers as this plane held Gwen and Joe, Brandon and Hannah, the Martins and the Walters, adults only. More information to come, but be in prayer and be in peace. God is in control, and we will not stop moving forward with what God wants with this church. On behalf of Michael and I both, we love this church, and we need the prayers of the righteous on this one. Thank you, and we will keep you posted." So they were notified around, I don't even know, 1 o'clock, next of kin. My source says that they thought that that was an odd message, being that the plane went down pretty erratically. The flight pattern is here. They took off just after 10:53, and they crashed by 10:55. So they were in the air around 90 seconds or so, about a minute and a half, because they were in air around 10:53:30. And they went all the way up to 2,900 feet. They fell down to 1,900 feet within within about a 30-second time frame. They shot back up to 2,900 within about a minute or 50-second time frame. And then after that, it was like a straight descent down into a lake. So the lake is described as a pretty deep lake right outside of Smyrna. It's very wooded and dense. So that's kind of a picture of what it is, what the plane, like the lake looks. And there's trees that are all around it. So even within the way that the lake is set up, it's very, very wooded, which means that recovery efforts are going to be really tough here, because it's apparently, my source says that they were told that the plane was obliterated. So it's in a zillion different pieces, and it's way down in the water. And so they're not likely to get huge pieces of the plane to come out, which means if the plane is in a million pieces, it's going to take a while to recover the bodies. So 7 people are all presumed perished, including Gwen Shamblin, who is the leader of this cult. So her daughter, whose husband passed away within an hour or two, is telling people that they're still going to move on with the church, which kind of upset my source, because my source has family on there, and thought it was really, in a way, almost heartless of the daughter to be talking about the church moving forward when they haven't even announced at that point that they hadn't even released the names at this point when she was sending these text messages. And it was not a controlled landing. The landing was actually not controlled at all. There's been a reporter that is out of Tennessee from News Channel 5 that's been covering this on Twitter. And he was the one that shared the flight log. And he also had been sharing some details, like the call to, like, this is the call that they had with the air controllers.
66 Bravo Kilo to park you on frequency.
66 Bravo Kilo with you.
66 Bravo Kilo, stay altitude. You're ready to contact 3 north at Smyrna, flighting of 130. 6 Bravo Kilo, you copy heading 130?
130, 66 Bravo Kilo.
Roger, advise cancellation of last line there. This frequency on the ground via the GCO, change to advise frequencies for Center 6 Bravo Kilo, call maintain 15,000, 15,000.
So approach Blue Rider 71 pass through 1800.
Center 6 Bravo Kilo, departure heading here.
So he's just having like normal talks with the...
Station 6 Bravo Kilo, departure heading here. Station 6 Bravo Kilo, heading here. Blue Rider 71X, park ident, SL, altimeters 3003.
3003, Blue Rider 71.
So you can hear...
1947, 2000 for 4000.
At one point in time, you can hear like alarms going off in the cockpit. It's not clear if that was like Mayday alarms, or sometimes there's like engine alarms that go off when you're first going off, I guess, that make noise that can be heard over the radio. So it's not clear like what those alarms were. And they just lost contact, and then the plane went straight down. So it was apparently very foggy yesterday, and they had been told to adjust their turns. So they were supposed to make a 90-degree turn, but they were going to do a 130-degree turn or something. Something had been changed in the flight pattern, and that's why they were talking back and forth with the flight control in Nashville. So something went wrong, whether it was the engine failing or something, but at some point in time, the plane just didn't, it went up, it went down, and then it went down back again. So they're still recovering, they're still working, the search and rescue are out there, the FAA is out there, there's a crew that's investigating what caused the crash, and there are now a lot of people waiting for their loved ones to be recovered. So whether or not you agreed with this woman, it's obviously a massive tragedy, but the woman herself is very controversial. So it would be difficult to talk about her life without the controversy that surrounded her because of how harmful the practices were, and how she was basically promoting a pro-anorexic religion, and people were being heavily controlled by her, and then also being told to give up their lives for her, dedicate all their time, all of their resources, all of their money to this organization. And one of the big criticisms of her was that the church was not a 501(c), so it was not a nonprofit, it was actually a for-profit organization. And she often would claim to not take a salary from the church, but she had a separate ministry called the Way Down Ministry Workshop, where she was making millions of dollars promoting this really bad diet advice to people and making people just feel terrible if they were overweight, I'm told. So, if anything, I have no idea how this can go on without her, unless her daughter, who is grieving the loss of her husband, really thinks that she's going to take over this church now. I don't know. Hopefully, with the passing, though, it can shed some light on sort of the dangers of the group, that of what this group was, the insularness of this group, and sort of the dangerous messages that this woman was actually promoting. And the actual last sermon that she posted on her YouTube channel was all about being born again. And this is just a clip from the very end of her sermon. And this is Gwen.
You are conceived in love. And love and fear is what grows you. Love and fear is what guides you. Grows you, guides you. It guides you through the birth canal. And finally, it is love and it is fear that births you. You're born again to live forever. To see mortal humans being transformed into a full-grown, unworldly man whose spirit life through obedience is mixed with God's. You are clean because of the words spoken. You are.
So So basically, in her very last sermon that was uploaded on her YouTube channel, she was telling people that if they believed her, they would become immortal, which is really eerie if you think about it. And it was this whole sermon about, and it's not an uncommon thought within a lot of these very conservative, even fundamentalists, where they say you have to die to yourself. And so you have to, like, all of the old things that you used to do, you have to die and not do anymore. And that part of you, you have to kill. And then the new part of you becomes like the part that's, become part of the Holy Spirit. But the thing is that in that same sermon, she's telling people that the only way that they can become born again is if they stay at her church, if they listen to the people who are born again, if the people who they listen to are God-like. I mean, in the same sermon, she likened herself to God. And she also told people that in order for them to become born again, they had to spend more time, more resources, and more money with the church. And that they were the only true people that understood what the righteous path to God is. And so a good marker for anyone that is concerned about whether or not something is a cult would be if the organization is asking you to sever ties with people who are not a part of the group, devote your time, your money, and all of your resources to the group, to that your group is the only group that has the secret information, and that critical thinking or any other information outside of the group is discouraged. And she has talked for years about not using reason, letting go of all the critical thinking out there and go just to the Bible, which is very common with these groups. So in her case, she wanted people to worship her, to worship her brand of Christianity, and to give her ministry money. So she will have a very controversial, this passing is going to be very controversial for as many people that will be grieving today. There will be also a lot of people who are hurt by her, or that have family members stuck in this cult that might not be so upset. And that's just the sad reality of what happens in situations like this. I think people don't want these kinds of things to happen, but sometimes family members, if their families are trapped in a destructive cult like this, they can look at this as a way out. So I know my source is hoping that this can be a way out for their family who are remaining. So it's going to be a complex. It's not going to be an easy story to tell. Anytime someone's part of something this controversial, even the news channels are already starting to talk about her controversy. So it's tragic. The way that she passed away is awful. No one should have had to go through that. But that also doesn't change the life in which she led. I hope that makes sense. So we'll probably cover this a little bit more. And if you have friends or family that are stuck in this group, you can reach out to me. If you were there and you have information, you can let me know. But for now, that's all I've got. Bye, guys.